in progress.
On guard and cut. Carry. Colors. Forward. March. The on. Right. Face. Post. Colors. Ready, face, reason, arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ready, face, wake up. Order, colors. Ready, face. Aye. Thank you. President Burkmeyer.
Here.
Mr. Moses. Here. Greatest President, Ms. Knox.
Here.
Mr. Richards.
Here.
Mr. Drew. Here. Mr. Middlestadt. Here.
Start with the approval of the agenda for tonight. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Knox?
Yes.
Ms. Burkmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Drew?
Yes.
Mr. Middlestate?
Okay, and we'll go on to the superintendent's update for this month.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. We are proud to have incoming freshman Jacob Nickert, 10th grader Joey Elliott, and volunteer boat captain and dad Sean Elliott here because they won the 2021 Michigan Student Angler Federation High School State Championship held on July 25th, 2021 at Hubbard Lake. So I want to welcome them to come up here because far be it from me to steal a fisherman's fish story here. So we're going to have them come up and they kind of explain what's happening.
It was really an epic day. We fished a tournament the day before and actually won. And we came up that night. We got to the Hubbard Lake at 1 o'clock in the morning. Got about 3.5 hours of sleep. And our hopes really weren't too high for the next day. And it just kind of turned out. We got 2 fish quick in the morning, tried to keep them alive all day. And we got our last 3 fish in that last hour. They just happened to be the right bites. And we just hoped they weighed heavy. We had no idea we had a winning bag. And it just happened to turn out it was 18 pounds, 2 ounces, about a pound heavier than second place, and 3 pounds heavier than third place, which is almost a whole fish. And we really just had an epic day.
I'm just thankful for the fishing club and everything we could do, all the tournaments and events and stuff for the little kids and anglers, stuff we can learn.
it's not always about the tournament fishing, but that's what everybody sees. Thank you.
Well, this isn't nearly as cool as the trophies, but here's an award from the board. And what we're going to do is, well, if we can have you guys come back, we'll get a quick picture with the Board of Education and your trophies and everything. So, Dad, we welcome you to come on up as well.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a microphone right there.
Hi, I'm Sean. Hi.
Right. Hi, I'm Sean. Just wanted to say thank you to the board, all the schools. I've worked with all the schools throughout the years since 2018, and thank you to all the supporters of the fishing club, my family. We just had a great tournament. We really appreciate being here. Really appreciate representing the school. So thank you again.
You guys did it front. You guys are in front. Okay.
I'll grab your trophy. Yeah, we can leave it.
Good shot.
And don't feel bad if you guys gotta leave. I know you have homework to do or tours to organize or something, so. Congratulations.
Okay, continuing on, you should have a handout that I gave to you that one side has flow chart, the other side has a couple of Excel tables, just to kind of explain. We've been working with Macomb County, to revise the quarantine processes. This went back till summer, we were working on this, and they've been tracking the data. And if you look at the Excel sheet, just to give you some rationale, what that sheet, it covers Oakland County schools and Macomb County schools, just to give you a comparison between cases. So if you look, does not account for if they had different start times, if they started before Labor Day or not. This is just from this point up until yesterday, actually. And if it's blank, it means that they didn't have, we could not find it on their website. So there are 4 schools that we couldn't find data for, but it gives you a good comparison. So Macomb County, out of 120,000 students reported, there have been just over 1,000 cases. So it's just slightly under 1% positivity rate so far through 4 weeks of school, about 0.92 of 1%. Oakland County, which has a mask mandate, about 169,000 students. They've had about 1,223 cases, and that's about a 0.93% positivity rate. So they're slightly higher thus far. Other information that the health department shared with us so far: 98% of the quarantines in the county have returned without becoming cases. 92% of cases that have been reported through their contact tracing are outside of the school district, and roughly half of the ones that are in schools have been through athletics. That's been the major spread factor. We are averaging about 4 cases per day on average. Our 7-day average is about 1/3 of 1%. And so far this year, you can see we're within the averages for the county. The other side is the flow chart. They are changing the quarantine because that's been the major issue, has been just the sheer number of quarantines. And I'm sure you've heard from people on this. So they are changing it to kind of mirror what the state put out earlier, where the depending on, it'll tighten up the distance a little bit. They're allowing 3 feet now, and then students can remain in school as long as they're asymptomatic. And if they're within that 3 feet, they have an option. Now, there's 3 options for quarantine. If you look at that lower left-hand box. So they can quarantine at home for 10 days, which was the standard. They can quarantine at home in return after 7. If they get a test after the 5th day, or now they can remain in school as long as they're willing to test on a daily basis. So this is now in effect. It will not be reflected on the Macomb County website probably until next week, but they're allowing us this into effect immediately.
Will that make it retroactive for current quarantine cases?
Yes. Yeah, so I shared this with the building principals, and then they will reach out and we'll contact everyone based off of that. Any other questions?
Are we, for the situations where you might have to test daily to come in, are we providing any of that?
We're working on that right now with the MIC. They actually, there's some ESSER funds that they have. They're trying to find people to actually do the testing. So far, they haven't been able to do that, but they have tests that, because the state gives them to them, and we pick those up. And so then we're just working on how would we go about doing that testing. You know, there's a couple districts that already do that. Students basically, they take the swab, they do that, they stick it in the machine, they just have somebody supervise it.
Real quickly, I didn't have my mic on, so I want to make sure everyone heard. I asked Mr. Jankowski if these new quarantine guidelines will apply to the current quarantines, and he said yes, that the building principals have been notified. I didn't have my mic on, so I want to make sure everyone heard that.
Mr. Jankowski, how are we going to disseminate this to our parents? Seems like there's been a little bit of disconnect between what our parents are hearing and what school itself might be hearing.
Yeah, I have a communication ready to go out tomorrow that this will be part of it.
Email to all the parents.
It'll be emailed to all the parents, yeah.
Thanks.
That's it for my update.
We will go into public forum. So public forum again is for in-person comments only. Comments about specific employees should be directed to them personally and not in the public forum. And then administration will follow up within 48 hours of the meeting. So I first have a request from Rose Gottler. You can come up to the podium. There should be a microphone there.
I'm Rose Gottler, 4700 Mayor Road, Casco, Michigan. I'm addressing the board and the superintendent about my concerns about the lack of direct communication to parents and guardians of anchor-based students regarding COVID cases within their children's schools. Last year, as well as all years prior, it's been the policy of this district to inform parents of cases of infectious diseases and parasites within the school buildings via letter, more recently via formal email communication. Letters regarding strep throat, pink eye, hand, foot, mouth, ringworm, lice, etc., and most recently COVID, have always been sent to inform parents so they can take the necessary precautions to assess their child of symptoms and make a determination on whether or not to send their child back into the school environment. I'm here to ask why this policy to inform all parents and guardians of COVID cases in their children's schools via formal letter and email has not been in practice for the 21-22 school year. Parents have not been informed in communication by the superintendent of this change in policy and where they can go to look to find the information on case counts in their children's schools. I spoke to several parents in the district who have had no idea that the letters were not being sent this year, and they didn't know where to find the information. They were surprised and deeply concerned that they had COVID cases within their children's schools. If parents are unaware of the change and where to find this information, how can they make informed decisions regarding sending their child to school with a mask on? The following is on the district COVID case reporting website. After all students who have been directly impacted are contacted, a letter will be sent to alert parents of a positive case within the school building. Why are the letters not being sent out? Thus far, I should have received 13 letters from the high school, 2 letters from middle school north, and 7 letters from Ashley Elementary. That doesn't account for the number of cases because sometimes they put multiple cases on one letter. In regards to the high school, my daughter and several other students received a quarantine notice in Power School a week after they were exposed of a positive COVID individual. That means these unmasked students were in contact with other students in the building for 4 school days before they were notified that they had been exposed and could be potentially infected and infecting others. Parents did not receive notification directly from the district for several hours after the quarantine notices went up in Power School. Parents were confused and had no idea what was going on. They didn't know if they should send their child to school the next day until a couple hours later, they got a notice from the district. If there's going to be a week delay in quarantine for COVID positive cases, how are we able to keep the virus from freely spreading among students and staff? If it's the policy of this district not to require students and staff to wear masks, then it should be the policy of the district to keep parents well informed of the COVID cases within their children's schools. Will the district no longer be sending out letters to inform parents of other highly contagious diseases and parasites? Who's ever gotten the lice letter? How does that make you feel? My children do not feel safe or secure when they are surrounded by people that are coughing, sneezing, blowing their noses, and not wearing masks. It's the responsibility of the administration to keep parents informed and to ensure the health, safety, and proper education of the children. Use all the tools in your toolbox, require masks, and send letters out to parents to inform them of cases of COVID in their child's school. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Sarah Kolchewski. I am the parent of an elementary-age child and a preschool-age child within April-based school district. My name is Sarah Kolchewski, and I live at 7260 Cardinal in Plain, Michigan. I have reached out to Dr. Jankowski, the Macomb County Health Department, Mark Hagel, and the school board via email. However, we've reached a place where I feel it is necessary to address the board directly and in person. I am asking that each of you do what is logical and necessary. Please support a mask mandate for our district. While I find it hard to comprehend, I recognize full well how controversial masking is. But the truth is that masking is the easiest, the most readily available mitigation method we have available to us. My children are not old enough to be vaccinated, and I've done everything in my power to keep them safe. Like many mothers, I've lost standing at work. I've lost thousands of dollars due to unpaid time off. And we paid to have a teacher in my home working with my son who was in virtual school last year. Because of last year's virtual schooling, I also know firsthand just how much my child needs in-person schooling. We returned to in-person April 2021, and I was so thoroughly impressed with how universal masking ensured little interruption to instruction due to COVID. Unfortunately, this level of sacrifice, financial, etc., is unmaintainable for us. At the same time, we just do not know enough about the long-term effects of this virus. I'm certainly not going to be more cavalier with my child's health than I am with my own. I put my trust in you in the district for my children's education. Unfortunately, I do not think it's reasonable to you or the community that elected board members and a superintendent are responsible for making informed public health decisions. This is not said as a slight, but over and over, we're told that case numbers are not in a place that warrant universal masking. We're
we're told that we're following health department guidelines. MDHHS supports a universal masking policy. The CDC does as well. So does the APA and the Association of National Children's Hospitals. Masking is the single best protection for children who are too young to be vaccinated. Adjacent counties with similar case levels have implemented a mask mandate. Is our district's justification that we should just wait until the levels are high enough? Are we there yet? I believe we've had over 500 exposed kids sitting at home since the start of the year. I have very little reason to believe that this decision-making process comes down to anything other than local politics, unfortunately. So let's look at our community. If I remember last year, we had a huge majority of our community railing against virtual school and door closures. Why wouldn't the district be even more intent for this very reason in making sure that the highest number of kids could stay in school? If masks were mandated, then there'd be no quarantining at home due to exposure. My understanding is that it would eliminate entirely the need for a child to miss school unless they tested positive. The district should be as open as it can and as responsive as it can with COVID case reporting. I was told by the administrative office I wasn't allowed to know if my son's class had an active COVID case. HIPAA was referenced. I confirmed with the health department there would be no violation of disclosure of this information. Please partner with me to help me keep my child safe. Do not shut me out. We should be working as a team. Just today, Ashley announced 3 new cases with just 1 exposure. Chalking it up to outside community spread is an affront to our intelligence. Oftentimes we say that masking is the very least we can do. However, as I see pictures on social media of kindergarten classes sitting face to face in groups of 6, I realize perhaps our district really is just not grasping the seriousness of the situation. Someone in our school community very recently lost a family member due to COVID amidst the outbreak at Eldred. My heart goes out to that individual and that family. We should be working to make sure that we do not lose any other community members. And slowing transmission amongst kids is what's going to make that a success. I expect courage from the group of professional, educated adults charged with protecting my most precious commodity. I expect you to have the audacity to do the right thing no matter how loudly some might disagree. I expect you to create rules and mandates that fall in line with what science, health, and disease experts dictate. I expect you to act in the best interest of the students and school community members whose lives you value so much. Instead, you've repeatedly chosen not to act, to wait and be told how to handle difficult circumstances, to allow other entities to make the hard decisions so that your hands will be clean if people are unhappy. It's not leadership. It's not promoting parental choice. It's not following science. It's shirking responsibility. It's failing to do the job. I'm here because I love this community. I'm incredibly proud that my children are a part of this school community, and I'm here because I want to make this a safer school community for students, staff, and their families. Most important, I'm here to advocate for my babies. Thank you for your time.
I don't have any other requests for speaking. Go on to communications. Communications to share tonight. So we'll go on to the consent agenda, which tonight includes an approval of the August 25th organizational meeting minutes, personnel report, financial report, and bills payable from August 21 that the board members were provided with.
Chairman, I'd like to request a personnel report.
So we'll go forward with the remainder of the consent agenda. So that will be the August 25th minutes, the financial report, and the bills payable from August. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I'd just like to point out, if you look at your usually Robin's here. But on your treasury report, you always have the cash flow. And every year we've had to, because of our fund balance, we've always had to borrow money. Look at, just an example is, we had to borrow $3.5 million because the way the state pays us, they skip a month when they don't pay us. But if you look at September's cash balance, we borrowed $3.5 million in August, and the cash balance was $242 million. So just,
Thank you.
sorry. So just to point out that financially, because we don't have a very high fund balance, we require that $3.5 million. Without it, we would have had $3 million a whole from a cash balance standpoint. So I just wanted to point out that I kind of do this every year, is that just to recognize when people talk about revenue and expenditures and fund balance, that when we say we need a 7 or 8% fund balance, part of that is we don't have, we need to have money set aside for we have emergency expenditures, but the way the state pays it. So I just wanted to point that out there. We have to borrow every year just to make the cash balance flow based on the state payments, primarily because we don't have an adequate financial cash balance. So just wanted to
Any other discussion? All right, go ahead and
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Ms. Knox?
Yes.
Ms. Brookmeyer?
yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Lopez?
Yeses. Now we'll take up the personnel report separately. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented? Perhaps, do you want to explain?
No, I just wanted to point out is that last year we had a retirement incentive where we paid out $8,000 per employee if they volunteered to retire early. We had about 23 employees. So we paid out about $1.7, $1.8 million. And I pointed this out this last month is that the situation we're in, if you look at our personnel report, we're having to hire, because we're hiring late. I've talked to the superintendent before, and I'm just gonna, maybe a broken record, but we asked the administration last year to execute a retirement incentive that was supposed to save us $2.7 million, and it only saved us $1.1 million. And part of the reason is we ended up hiring late, and I know at our June meeting, Mr. Richards pointed out that we had posted jobs and they hadn't been filled, and we had a large discussion in June. So I just, and I know you said, well, we'll have to do better next year, but I'm just looking for accountability for this year. Is that out of that $2.7 million, you were able to account for about $900,000. Why the numbers aren't matching, but we're still another $800,000 off from our estimate. So I'd like to just point that out as we approve this personnel report. I like to understand or some kind of review of what happened, why numbers came out of the business office instead of we get 2.7 and we only got 1.1. Part of the reason is we had to hire people at a higher step because we hired late. Just want to know why we hired late and why our numbers aren't matching. So I'd like to at least see those numbers brought before us and why the business office is $1.6 million off of the rest. I can understand $500,000, even $1 million, but $1.6 million off the estimate that's given to the board that's not correct. That's not the way to run a business. So it's like the business office to justify what happened. So that's part of the reason I pulled the personnel out, because we're hiring people at high step because we're hiring them in September. We discussed this before, and we had a debate in June about let's hire people and get feedback from administration at that time is we're not going to hire people. We adamant that we should. So I just want to point that out that we have recognized it now, but I want some accountability of what happened last year. So.
Is there a motion to approve the personnel report?
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay. Call the roll.
Moses?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Burkmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Drew?
Yes.
Mr. Middlestate, yes. Thank you.
Passes. Okay, we'll move on to new business. So we'll bring back our legal RFPs. If you followed the last business meeting, the board, we had some of our members were absent for various reasons. And we were unable to pass and choose a legal representation going forward for our organizational meeting. So we basically just waited until we got the full board in attendance so that we could take a vote on it and see where everybody stood with the full board. So the RFPs, as I understand, did not change. They remain the same, and the recommendation was, do you want to go ahead?
Originally, we had 6 law firms, and so the recommendation is to cut that in half and to retain Croom for our general needs, Miller Johnson for policy needs, and then Seacrest, which they're part of the entire litigation. And so that's something where we're party to it along with numerous other districts. It's a class action suit where the state ends up paying us money because they violated the Headley Amendment all the way probably 30 years ago. And yet it's just, they maintain that, so they continue to get funding. So that's the only thing that we would use the Seacrest for.
What was the purpose of?
It was done, yeah, I'm gonna say it was at least a year and a half to 2 years ago. I think it was January.
Yeah, it may have been January of 20. And we just updated it, just so you know, we went back out to get
Right,
updated.
they
costs.
did reaffirm those bids. Originally, I think there was just to look at and to downsize some of our legal representation, as we previously had 7 or 8 firms on retainer, that we could streamline some of that. So just as part of the board organizational meeting, I just decided, since we never moved forward with any changes, and just bring it back. We don't have to make any changes. Or we can choose the recommendation, the recommended action. The superintendent is to retain Troon, Miller Johnson, and then Seacrest, as he indicated. So it's up to the board if we want to make that change to kind of streamline ourselves a little bit, take some off the finance sheet, or we could maintain.
I was trying to understand the criteria, because I know one type was cost. In the past, we looked at attorneys based on their local or experience locally or whatever, and what's their experience. In the past, True would be used for bond type things coming out of Lansing, and then recently, the last couple of years, we used them for negotiation. But cost is a factor, and I know Fletcher organization has been with us a long time. I know some ill feeling in the past about it, but I think they've done a fairly good representation of student suspensions and that. They were about $100. Rates were about $100 cheaper. So the objective is just to streamline and not look at cost. And I think a bit of a problem.
I'll tell you my perspective on it is a little bit of both. One, with 6, we were carrying probably 3 too many. And Crew, what I like about Crew is that they have people that specialize across the board. So I can talk to somebody and say, you have somebody for Title IX or somebody for bonds or somebody. So their expertise, you get somebody who that is their expertise. Miller Johnson that's who we use for our policies, that's who we use for training. And they've done a great job for us. And because they're on retainer, we can also use them if we need it for something else. So, and Seacrest are already explained. So by limiting that, I think that would cut down tremendously on our cost and give us the expertise we need, as well as the flexibility.
My point is, it's $100 cheaper, I guess, student suspension or an issue once every other week, 10 hours, $1,000. We're talking $20,000 worth of added cost because we're trying to consolidate. So that's my point. That would possibly affect the decision.
And I anticipate with this that we will have a significant reduction in our legal costs, just as is, just with these three, just by not carrying the other three firms.
So is there an appetite to make a motion, to make any changes or approve retainers, or status quo?
I would make a motion to approve recommendations by Superintendent Jankowski to narrow it down to approve Miller Johnson and Cedar specifically for the headly amended lawsuits. I'm sorry, yes, Seacrest for the Cedar litigation. Yes, those three firms as recommended by Superintendent Jankowski.
I'll second that. I'll second.
Any other discussion? Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Ms. Brookmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Richards,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue. Yes. Mr. Middlestate, no. For the record, it's a cost tax. It showed me in the year that it saves significantly by doing that. No, that is.
Next up is the second reading for a policy regarding the organizational meetings. If you remember last meeting, we discussed that going forward, we're going to kind of repeat in January, move our organizational meeting in January. So along with that comes a change in our board policy so that our policy follows our actions, and that we're in accordance with our own policies. So this is to align the board with the elections as well, and that it will reflect recent changes as well in Michigan law regarding virtual board meetings. Policy change must be approved at 2 different meetings. So tonight would be the first reading, sorry, the second reading. The first was held next month. Okay, so motion by Mr. Middlestate. Is there a second to approve?
Second.
Any discussion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to the definition of a full-time student.
The rationale for this change is pursuant to the Michigan School Code and the Michigan Pupil Accounting Manual, each school district's board of education shall adopt requirements defining the number of class periods or number of courses when appropriate, required to be a full-time pupil for each building or program. If the district has an alternative education program, the school district's board of education may adopt requirements defining a different number of class periods or courses required to be considered a full-time pupil in the alternative education environment. As virtual and alternative students may not take all 6 periods at once, or students with block classes may only take 4 classes over a 6-period day, it is recommended that Anchor Bay define a full-time student as one who is taking at least 4 courses per term to provide flexibility under the pupil accounting rules. So the recommended action is that the Board of Education approve 4 courses as the minimum number a student must take at one time to count as a full-time student.
Is there a motion to approve the recommended action?
I just have one much a question, but could you give us an example, mostly for parents and people watching at home, of how this would be beneficial?
Mainly with, this is something, it's kind of it's something that they added last year with, based off of COVID in order to qualify for funding. So the one example that I gave is if you have a student taking a block class, technically they're not taking 6 courses. And so currently, I believe last year was approved at 6. And so that's an issue sometimes with our auditor, how they approve those courses. Or this would also cover alternative, because they might not take 6 classes at a time, they might take 4 at a time. And then where they're not taking for 20 weeks, they might take 4 for 5 weeks, and another 4 for 5 weeks. So this just gives us flexibility with the auditor when they're counting the full-time equivalents for the audit.
Will this change allow for students to have an early release out of school? They still be required to stay the full high school 6th period day?
They would still be required to stay the entire day. This is only for audit purposes.
Is there a motion to approve the recommended action to approve 4 courses as full-time student?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
I just have one question. Are you seeing other districts following the same pattern with 4 courses?
I can definitely say there's one nearby that's what they approved last year. Yes, it's just to give you flexibility, because we have sometimes it's been well known there's been issues with the way that they kind of audit for the head count and so on. So this protects us in order to make sure that we're getting the maximum funding that we can get. And that's really why it should be a little bit less than what 6 periods we require, but for the audit purposes, it should be less than if you have those special cases. Sometimes that can get you kind of tripped up during the audit if they're really trying to nitpick numbers.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed. Motion passes. We have a field trip request. So the annual Cedar Point field trip, Mr. Latona is requesting permission to allow staff to plan their PBIS reward trip to Cedar Point for 6th through 8th grade students from middle school south who maintain good behavior and grades to travel to Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio as a reward trip. It would be on May 26th, 22. The students would travel via a charter bus departing south at 6 a.m. and return at approximately 9 p.m. And likewise, Mr. TD is requesting similarly for a reward trip to Cedar Point for 6th through 8th grade from middle school north who maintain good behavior and grades to travel to Cedar Point. Their trip would be on June 3rd and also via charter bus leaving north at 6 a.m. and returning at about 9 p.m. So the recommended action was that the board approve the Cedar Point field trips for both south on the 26th and north on June 3rd. Is there a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
I will second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So we're going to move on to other information. So tonight we have, as we indicated at the start of August with our meetings, so tonight we're going to be discussing the Chinese program that we've previously housed in this building. Mr. Jankowski is going to discuss a little bit, but what we were going forward with is that tonight is only a discussion to kind of start bringing our opinions, ideas out to the table. There's no vote on this information. The vote will come at a subsequent meeting, but just to start understanding, the community's input as well as our own. And Mr. Jankowski is going to discuss.
And as I shared previously in one of the updates, I shared with you the contract to kind of give you some background. Our 5-year contract is up at the end of this year. And for the last 2 years, I believe that we did not have any students from that program. There is interest from the Chinese program to continue it so that you're aware. And basically, we have some decisions that we have to make starting in October on whether we're going to maintain, there's licensing we have to have for this building. We're going to operate a boarding school in And so that has to be decided next month. So we're just looking for input, and I know some discussion from the board based off of the history of the program. I can tell you my experience with the Chinese program, but I believe it's a different administrator over it. And in the past, I know those have been problematic in other districts. They've been, I don't want to mention district names, but we'll search it. So I know there have been issues on that end. There are positives to it. It does increase funding because they pay a tuition on top of, and you get state funding as well, as long as they're brought up with the correct method. And if they have the correct visa, the state will actually pay student funding on top of that. So it does bring in some students that it's a different experience for our students and for those students. So and that's kind of where we're at now, and why we need just input from the board basically on what are your thoughts on the program and continuing it.
So just a quick question. I think I know the answer, but I want to clarify. You mentioned our 5-year contract has expired. So if we do nothing at this point, nothing happens. We're not under any obligation, right?
No, so if we do not act, we do not renew it, then it is over.
The revenue profit is right around $1 million.
I believe the last year that I looked, I believe it was just under 7.
Mr. Middleton, I don't think revenue is the right word, though. I think that was the bottom line of that program. That was our takeaway, if you will. We transferred for other costs. And
Right,
stuff like that.
just the business world of profits. Yeah, that's the revenue over expenditures, around 7,000. We were able to use it for textbooks and other things. So that's kind of the purpose of the funds we direct back to schools.
Revenue aside, problem with it, I don't think it was a hugely popular program amongst the students. And the problem with it was we basically had to force them to take it to have enough students maintain the thing. Like we had to start in elementary, because it's such a difficult language to learn. We had to force our kindergartners, first graders, second graders into this. Then when we got into junior high, then we made it elective, but they didn't want to. They wanted to take an hour away from social studies because they didn't think there'd be enough kids that would take that as an elective. I think we got to offer the kids what they want more than just worry about the funds that are coming in. I think that they wanted their extra hour of social studies. They wanted to be able to pick different electives. But that's just kind of my stance on it.
Yeah, I think there's 2 pieces to this. One was program at the high school. The other piece was taking a portion of those revenues and funding Mandarin teachers at the elementary level. The goal was to progress through this thing. So there's 2 pieces that we could continue. I think we could continue the high school program without the other piece.
Yeah, that being said, I think the high school went over a lot better because it wasn't forced, and it wasn't in the Chinese students in high school seemed to get, it was a nice change, especially with, we're not always the most diverse school anyway. But like I said, I know elementary through 8th grade was a hard set.
Right, so just to clarify, we're not discussing this, when we're discussing the Chinese program, it's not to bring, we had already discontinued Mandarin as a special in the elementary and middle school, so that piece is not what we're discussing bringing back. It's simply the exchange portion, bringing students to the high school, and that kind of the funding that we received from there as a benefit. But then, the benefits of the students being in the high school, our students as well. So I think, like Mr. Mills had said, there were 2 separate pieces. The elementary piece was meant to complement the program, so that we could have students who could interact maybe more easily. And that part we had already discontinued. So this would just be simply, are we going to continue the exchange for bringing the Chinese students here for for schooling for that piece and offering that to them.
I know you guys are beating the dead horse, but I think like the reason we rolled that out to our elementary kids is because we had Mandarin teachers in the buildings that were with the high school students that truly, I wasn't having to do during the day, but we were filling their schedules. So we thought, I personally didn't think, but as a district, we thought we could take those Mandarin teachers and have them teach elementary students to fill in the middle of their day when they're not working with our high school students. That was the contract. No,
Maybe they're separate. Right? So,
correct, from what Mr. Minkowski.
This is just the exchange student part.
the stuff we have to do up front is we have to make sure all the licensing and everything else. That's part of our learning curve before, is making sure we had all the different licenses. What we ran into before, just to note also, you need to be careful. What happened to us last time is that we ended up having children below a certain grade level, which got us into a licensing issue, because once you had students, I don't know what the age cutoff was, but in the future, I think what we want to make sure is that we have students at that higher grade levels, so they don't run into that.
Yeah,
Because what I also did is it limited us how many kids we could have in a room, so it created some havoc, because when we worked with the company that we had, they ended up starting bringing students in that were 11th and 10th graders, which messed things up, because now I had to pull students out of the dorms. They had to have a certain ratio of students, and wasn't as cost effective as having younger students. So in the future, we would probably want to make sure we have a certain age.
Yeah, typically, exchange programs are for juniors and seniors.
Like Mr. Middlestead, they granted an option of putting students in a hotel at some point,
Yeah,
which obviously we didn't.
right. So we ran into, also had younger students had licensing reasons. Also, we had a capacity issue. We had a scramble the 1 year, but yeah, that has to be noted. If we do go forward, we got to make sure that we put some limitations on what each grade levels we have.
This program had other students that were not in 11th and 12th grade.
I can't remember what it was, whether it was 10th grade or whatever, but it had to do with age, I guess. So they weren't all seniors.
I think they brought some sophomores over.
Right.
And again, that's a speaking kind of out of memory. I'm not sure, but there was a challenge where we now suddenly needed to space them out more. And hotels and some other stuff to deal with the issue. And didn't move that direction, but
I'll tell you, and again, I have not worked with this program with this company, but in the past, a lot of times what you run into is you have no idea the students that you're getting until they're here. Same thing with instructors. It's probably 10 years ago at my previous district that we were starting the same thing, and they tell you you're going to have 3 instructors. We had an instructor, he said he had no idea that he was going to be teaching until the Friday before, and he showed up, and the instructor, they gave him $3,500 cash, 2 pairs of pants, and 1 t-shirt for me to teach by the drive and all that. Same thing with students. It's like you're told you're getting 12, and all of a sudden 20 show up, and what are you going to say? You have these kids that be scrambling trying to do that. So those are things that we'd have to make sure that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, one of the things we did is there were a lot of districts that had issues. We tried to learn from those other districts, try to modify our contract and try to accommodate those things. So, but of course, you have to keep on top of it. It depends on the companies you're dealing with. So I don't think we had any major issues with companies other than the age thing that we didn't recognize. We didn't realize that we had an issue until we had it. So,
the one thing I think I would ask for, probably more from Ms. Knox and Mr. Richards, is in Middlestad's point, what are the costs to bring this program back online? What are we looking at in terms of getting the building ready, getting the permits and the certifications, fire code, or whatever else may have changed? Because we haven't used the building now for 2 years to help students, right?
Yeah, but we still have the license. That is where we have to sign next month if we're going to go forward with maintaining it. It's a lot easier to maintain it than it is to resurrect.
So what I would like to see is dollars and cents of what kind of costs we're talking about, potential students we're talking about, And then, is it financially, is it even feasible to, I guess, restart this program after it being down for 2 years?
That also like some points on how we're going to integrate that with our high schoolers for our cultural experience, not just for them, but if they're here, how can our students benefit from it as well?
Money aside, what cultural benefits does this have over just having normal exchange students that live in families?
That's the same thing. I know this is a conversation about the Chinese exchange program, but we looked at other exchange students as well.
I think it was a revenue thing, right? You kind of break even with normal exchange. At the time, we thought a cultural thing here, but we have some opportunities for revenue that 5, 6 years ago, we were able, part of the reason we were able to restore some of the steps, we were able to get some of that revenue. Just revenue and some textbooks and stuff. So I think that's the difference. Whether it's the China program, I know some of the other districts, I don't know if it was one of the districts south of us that exchange programs or our students going over to other countries other than China. So there's other opportunities.
Yeah, your typical exchange program, there's about 4 different exchange programs, and those are kind of on an individual student basis. And they just place it with the volunteer host family. There's no additional funds for room and board or anything that comes with that. You just get the normal student FTE. With the Chinese program, they provide funds for the room and board and all of that. I believe it's 22,000 per student and claim the FTE.
And to speak on a personal note, Dennis, we had a middle school exchange student just for 2 weeks. So it was a fantastic experience for our house. However, friends of mine had a German exchange student. It was not a fantastic experience, and she ultimately left that district. So as far as independent, whereas we're boarding here, that those dollars are going to be consistent, whereas if they're with the family, they can leave. Hold them hostage or anything, but as far as getting a fuller experience, both for the student and for the school, I think that seems like a more efficient way of doing things. And then they also have what we noticed with our exchange student when we got together with other her friends that were here with her. It was great for her to interact. So I think they don't have that when they're just in an individual home, as opposed to a boarding situation. Her English was fantastic. Her mother was the English teacher. But with her friends, you could just see a different level of involvement.
I think that's Mr. Green mentioned. I think the cultural thing, we understand financial, who's out there. I'm sure China Link or whoever we were doing before is probably interested, but who else is out there and what the cost? Is it still going to be 700,000 or what's the upfront cost, or what's get more information, come back to the next one.
So my only question on that is, and pardon my ignorance, because I know we haven't run the program here for 2 years, so I'm not sure. Are there any issues right now because of the pandemic getting visas and things for students? Like if things stay as they are right now, these students, are they having any problems coming? They obviously are, some people are saying they want to come. Is the reality that they are able to right now, but they have come?
Well, they just opened it up so that will be, and there are conditions based on testing and so on and so forth. So yeah, that going forward, they should, assuming everything stays as it. But we'd also have to look at what happens if you get a student and then that's positive, how does that affect? I don't know. We have to do some investigating.
So one of the options could be also, if we don't know exactly the future, is at least if renewing the license is much easier than creating a new license, and maybe an option might be, let's just renew the license so I have it and do the minimum cost, but at least have it, tread water for another year to decide. So that's what I find out is the cost. It's a minimal investment, just extend it, and I'm kind of interested in might be worthwhile. Just holding on to it.
Thank you.
We will move on to board comments. I'm just gonna start going around. Richards?
I'd like to thank all the teachers, staff, and community members that attended the strategic plan meeting on September 15th. It was great to see the common goal we all have for an incredible community and school district. I'd like to recognize the teachers and staff that attended curriculum night. It was great to see the excitement be back in the classroom and the vision for our students. I'd like to thank the staff and our transportation department for going over bus safety at our elementary schools before the start of school. I'd like to remind everyone the homecoming parade is Friday at 4:30 p.m. downtown in Baltimore. The football game is at 7. If you are a student attending the homecoming dance on Saturday, please remember to make good decisions. I'd like to thank the Anchor Bay Community Giving Tree and the Anchor Bay Community Foundation who donated 327 backpacks for school supplies. The Anchor Bay School District Aquatic Center has open registration for swimming lessons for children 8 months to 14-year-olds. Also, if you're interested in water aerobics and lap swim, registration has also started. Parent-teacher conferences for the high school are October 13th and 14th, and October 21st and 22nd for the middle school. The MSBOA District Marching Band Festival is Tuesday, October 12th at Anchor Bay High School, and they are parent and student volunteers. Student volunteers can earn NHS hours. I'd like to recognize senior volleyball captain Carly Stoll for being nominated for Detroit Athlete of the Week. And last but not least, the Anchor Bay School District has part-time and full-time openings. We are looking for pre-paraprofessionals, paraprofessionals, custodians, preschool positions, teaching positions, athletic coaches, school-age childcare positions, security guards, substitute custodians, technology department, openings at the aquatic center, and substitute positions as well. Come join a great team. Thank you.
All right, I'm much less formal than Mr. Richards, as I'm writing my notes. Just want to thank everyone for their patience and understanding with all the challenges we've had with COVID and everything. We read everything you send us, Mr. Jankowski responds, but don't think that we don't read it because we do. Food service, I know everyone's been incredibly patient with them, and you can continue to be. It's not a fault on the part of the district, it's whole manufacturing and distribution issue, computer issue. What I do want to say is it's really, really good to be back. I'm also a football parent, watching Anchor Bay football tonight, and it's been great to see the community support come together, not only for our football team, but our band has been outstanding, our cheerleaders, our dance team, our youth football teams, everyone working concessions or tailgating beforehand. I do want to mention that the marching cars took first place in the Class A competition at the Troy Athens Invitational. So it's no wonder they also draw their own separate crowd on Friday nights. So it's just been really great to have that sense of community back. We really, really missed it last year. So I hope everyone comes out for the homecoming game Friday night. Saturday we have the dance, and I hope the kids, like Mr. Richards said, make good choices. And if not, tell your parents, we are here to help. And none of you are watching this anyways. So that being said, I think I'm open.
I don't have a lot more to add that they didn't already cover. I did have the opportunity to work in the concession stands one game. It was actually a lot of fun. And it was great to see the students in the stands, excited, see them back together, rush the field at the end of the game. It was just a great night. And get out and support the sports teams. They're doing really well. And
Well, being fourth in the line doesn't give you much to say, but I do want to point out, we appreciate all the attendance from the board members that attended, as well as the teachers, the central administration, Mr. Jankowski's leadership for the strategic planning process. It's something really, really important that we're we're undertaking, and it was great to see the probably 40 to 50 people here in this room and hear that there were some common goals and some common concerns. I truly enjoyed being part of that process. I look forward to 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, where we reconvene and try to get a little bit closer to narrowing the broad spectrum of concerns that we all had into a much more well-spoken, funneled, directed strategic plan. But homecoming parade is downtown, so come on down. The weather is supposed to be, I think, 70 and sunny, I saw, which is awesome for a parade. Starts at Walter and Mary Park Park at 4:30 and wanders around downtown a little bit up Washington and goes down to Alfred. But come on out, and then obviously come on out to the game on Friday night. I like Ms. Bergmeier's comments. It was really great to see students in the stands, although I've never seen I-beams bend. I did see them at that game. So it's great. I'm glad the kids are out. The band sounded great. I was very impressed with the upside down drummer that we had. That's something I've only seen at University of Michigan games, so I was excited for that. But the sense of community and everybody wanted to be together and be out was awesome. And I think this Friday and Saturday with the homecoming, I know there's a lot of students coming back into town. That's obviously what homecoming's about. Hope everyone makes good decisions as well, because things can get really sideways really quickly at that age. So.
I just want to reiterate what everyone's saying, and I think what we all know, and that is anchor-based place to be. We're constantly moving forward, and I want to thank everybody that helps, everybody that volunteers. It was great to see some board members out there. I know Ms. Sherry Hoffman and Mr. Richard was having a competition to see who sell the most 50-50 tickets. That was pretty cool to see. I got to see Ms. Bergmeier. It inspired me to know that I got to do more. Jill Knox is always doing something. So, and Mr. Jankowski, I've seen him at every game event. It's amazing to see the principals there, the teachers there, their families. It's really motivating, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
All right, yeah, you guys pretty much took it all, so, go Tars. Ditto.
Is there legislative update?
Yes, there are 3 legislative things that are going on. One of which schedule flexibility that is kind of piggybacks on the definition of full-time student, because everybody knows COVID is still around. All the flexibility that was there last year does not exist, and the state is aware and very concerned about what happens if there's outbreaks and how to handle that, because you still have that 75% threshold. You still have your count day, which is coming up, and they've been totally consumed with getting the rest of the state budget, which is due by October 1st. So that just passed. So now they said, look, sometime in the next 75 days, they're going to pass flexibility for this for count day, which happens on Wednesday. So we will get hopefully some flexibility should the things not play out, like if for kids, if there's kids in quarantine and so on. But we won't know until after count day happens. So it's just something that if you talk to any legislators or anybody who's watching, if they can do that as well, because this is something that should have been done before school started. And typically they wait until after the fact and say, okay, we meant to do this. Well, it's too late for us to make changes at that point because count day is come and gone. The other thing is they are also going to be turning towards ESSER funds there. It's about $6 billion, I believe, that are still left in federal funds. So that has to be by the end of this year's state budget, they have to have those funds out. This is going to be a whole nother discussion. They're planning having this done by February. So again, people have legislators that they want to talk to and have some things that they want those funds to go to. It's a good time because again, they have to do something with these funds or they will lose them. And lastly, with the previous ESSER equalization that they'll do, they still do not have a fix for that. So they did that equalization fund as part of, it's the American Recovery Act, or everybody calls it ESSER 3. They promised us They set a minimum threshold because it was about 101 difference between some districts and our district. So some districts were getting $100, 100 times the amount of funding. So like I think I mentioned, one district was getting 25,000 per student. We were getting about 500. And so what they wanted to do is close that gap a little bit. So they set it to $1,093 with this equalization. The feds came back and said, we don't know if that's necessarily illegal. And they said, don't worry, we have enough money in the school aid fund, so we'll just take it from there and make you whole. Well, all that's doing is taking it from what would have been the foundation allowance increase next year. So they're just taking it out of next year's fund and saying, well, we'll pay, and then those funds will go back to those districts. So now they're already getting 25,000 per student. They can get probably 30,000 per student, and we'd be back to that about $400 or so. So those are the three things that we're trying to keep an eye on in order to make sure, because it goes directly to whether we can maintain our programs. And it's not a small amount of money. The ESSER 3 is about $3.4 million.
For the public, explain what ESSER is.
ESSER is the COVID funding that they had. So they've had with each of the rounds. So the ESSER 3 was the first stimulus. So people received money. And there was some school funding. It was a smaller portion. And ESSER 2 was the second round. There was COVID mitigation, so that you can use for whether it's building upgrades, to lower class size, do whatever. And then there was the American Recovery Act, which we call ESSER 3, which is for the now that was like, okay, we're learning loss, so basically what that was targeted for.
I don't believe we've had any committees.
No, I was just going to mention that, yeah, next month we're hoping to get the audit. Our lead auditor, as with most companies, will have to go to a different auditing firm. So they're hoping to get that in time, more than likely, because they asked to see when's the last day they could get us the audit for, so we can get it on the next month's agenda. We'll probably do our finance committee will be next month, right before the board meeting. So that, because I think it's going to literally come in hot off the press.
So the combination of audit and state and funding, we won't really know exactly the bottom line for another couple of months.
Yes.
For the public's knowledge, and I know the staff and everybody else, because we've got negotiations coming down the street, but in the past, we got the audit, we're ready to go, we know what we're at right now, because the state and everything else, we really don't know. We said about 75 days, and this and that, so probably another couple of months before we really understand what our budget is.
Exactly.
Just want to manage expectations.
Last item we have is points of pride. I feel like we kind of rolled that into board comments a bit, but if anybody has anything additional to throw in, go ahead.
Actually, I do. I have an awesome story, and I don't know who to give the point of pride to, but last week I was on my way to a meeting, and I came across one of the Baltimore's elderly residents with a flat tire just off County Line on St. Clair. If you drive on County Line, you can probably understand why that was. I stopped off to help her. She said, no, AAA is on the way. I was kind of glad AAA was on the way because I was standing there in a suit and a tie on. So it would have been a good opportunity. But I decided on my way back, I would stop back for my meeting, which was up towards Richmond. And on my way back, there was two cars that stopped behind her on St. Clair. My alarm went off, like, why are there two cars there? I could not see what's going on. And as I go to get out of the car, there are two Anchor Bay students who are changing the elderly woman's tire. So I didn't intervene, I let them have their thing, but there were two of them there. I don't know what sport they played. And the only reason I know that they were from Anchor Bay is that Anchor Bay Athletics t-shirts on. It was after school, 4 or 5-ish, they're probably coming to practice. So for me, that's an entire point of pride for the entire high school. It was pretty awesome to see, even though I don't know who to thank.
Points of pride. Points of pride this month goes to Anchor Bay Marching Guitars for taking first place in the last day performance in the Troy Athens Invitational. Congratulations.
will adjourn at 8:15. All in favor?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Green, second by Ms. Knox. All in favor?